Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Bador, and I am the kidney goddess, if you haven't heard that yet. Yes. So I own the Creative Life by Design, and I have been doing these podcasts, and I have been having so much fun, and I have been learning so much myself that I wanted to share all these wonderful people that I have been learning about and all of their knowledge. And we'll chat about it today. And the one and only that I have today that I'm really jazzed to hang out with is Hannah Todd. And she is a physical therapist, and she's worked in several settings, the various settings throughout her career. And through her experience with hands-on in education and the experience, she has found that compassion is so important. Now, compassion not only towards our patients, but towards the caregivers. And my opinion in this day and age, sometimes we lose some of that compassion, not because we didn't go into the field for compassionate reasons. We love people and we love to take care of them. But healthcare, the way it's delivered right now, is just run, 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 productivity, the numbers in and out the door. And the real good guys will really listen to you. When I say guys, I mean women, men, will listen to you, but they are under big scrutinized effects of their bosses down, the trickle down theory. So she also is a co-teacher right now, and she's teaching a course in psychosocial, and she is teaching it to students for physical therapy. And again, talking all about compassion, like I said, not only for the patients, but for the caregivers too. We need so much of that when we're the caregivers. Right now with the pandemic, with COVID, there are so many people that are just getting burnt out from helping people. And it's not that they don't love to help people, but it's just a lot. So without further ado, here is Miss Hannah. Hey, Hannah.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for that very exciting introduction. I love what you said about people going into healthcare for compassionate reasons and then burning out because of the way that the medical system functions in our society. I think it's really, really true. And I think that if we want things to be different, we need to sort of infuse compassion through all the layers, like the healthcare's, the providers, the insurance companies, the administrators, like everybody needs to be on board for it to catch on. But thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yes, definitely. That is so true. All the way down, the trickle down theory.
All the way down. Yeah. Top down, bottom up, the whole group.
Yeah.
So first I wanted to start with just defining compassion and kind of setting it aside from empathy or sympathy. So compassion is the benevolent emotional response towards another person who's suffering, coupled with the motivation to alleviate their suffering and promote their well-being. So empathy would be like, I see you suffering, and compassion would be like, I see you suffering and I can help you. So without the action component, you don't have compassion. And that's where it can be difficult, I think, in a high production situation like healthcare, where you see someone suffering, you desire to help them, but you don't always have the time to do everything that you think that you should be able to do. So compassion is an evolutionary emotion. They've done a lot of studies to show that it's beneficial to societies and that by helping each other, society flourishes. And so, but in order to behave compassionately, there are three beliefs that each person needs to have in order to act compassionately. So first, when I see someone suffering, number one, I have to believe that that person has a relationship to me in some way. So I need to believe that we have like a shared humanity, or I can recognize their emotion in an experience that I've had myself. There needs to be a connection that feels real. The second belief that's required is that the person I notice is suffering doesn't deserve to be suffering. I think we have a lot of hangups about that, especially today in the COVID world, because, if you hear of someone dying of COVID, I feel like people often ask, well, were they vaccinated? like as though maybe you might be deserving of suffering regardless of your vaccination status. Or like sometimes with lung cancer, you might say, you might know a person suffering of lung cancer, and the first question asked would be like, well, did they smoke? Doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, we can be compassionate, but we have to believe that they don't deserve to suffer. The third belief required is that we ourselves are capable of reducing that person's suffering. And I think that can be scary too, because it requires some vulnerability. You have to try. You have to say, I see that you're suffering. I don't think you deserve to suffer. And I think that if I put myself out there, I could help you. And so all of those beliefs need to be in place before we can act compassionately. This is in a healthcare setting or just in any setting in the world. But if those three beliefs are required, then we can act compassionately. And that it has a benefit to the person receiving the compassion, because number one, it feels good when people are nice to you. But beyond that, it has real health implications. So when patients receive compassionate care, they use 50% less pain medication, which is a hot topic right now. Their wounds heal faster, they're less depressed, their physical function is improved, and actually their all-cause mortality is lower. So, they live longer, they heal faster, they're not depressed, they don't use pain medication. So it's really really beneficial. And all those benefits can be seen after just 15 minutes of compassionate conversation. Yes. So, it doesn't take, you don't have to move in with the person.
Right.
Be their personal cheerleader. No. Nice for a little while. And that really by itself should be enough for our society to value compassion and to set aside time for providers to be compassionate. But on the flip side, it also is protective against burnout. So when providers are allowed to be compassionate and they're given time and space to be compassionate, their levels of burnout plummet. And that's because we get into these helping fields because we want to help.
Yes.
And also, in addition to the burnout piece, people who are allowed to be compassionate and who live compassionately, they have decreased blood pressure, their cellular inflammation levels are decreased, they have decreased stress hormones circulating in their body, and they have improved ability to connect with their peers and decrease their stress levels that way. So really, if we could just find a way for the world to value this thing, we would all feel better, patients would get better, we could all just lift each other up.
Yes. I'm going to stop you right there for a minute.
Yeah.
I think there's a little one that's with you because I think I can hear her in the background. So I understand you're a mom. Just be aware that I can hear her in the background.
Okay.
And if she wants to show her face, I don't mind if she wants to show her face either. Okay, I don't know if she's one of those kids like, what are you doing, Mom? What's going on? I don't mind that at all.
Okay, great.
But yeah, I love the conversation that we're having. Even in the schools, in med schools and stuff, I just don't think that they teach that compassionate point at all. Even to this day, they're still not doing it.
They don't.
How do you think that we can infiltrate that into their training?
Exactly. So I think the way the current medical model is set up is that you learn facts in the classroom, and then you're supposed to learn these soft skills when you're in the clinic. But actually what you learn in the clinic is that you don't have time to be soft.
Yeah.
And so I think that really we need to be teaching these things in the classroom first before people go out. And so I'm really thankful to have the privilege to teach incoming physical therapy students.
Oh, definitely.
This information. Definitely. And I work in a teaching clinic, and actually my coworkers and other people who taught me are not aware of this information and this research that exists.
Oh, wow. That's awesome that you're teaching it.
Yeah. Everyone that I tell is like, oh, I've never heard of this, or, oh, I'm doing a study on patient adherence and I had no idea that compassion could increase adherence by 200%.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's so much out there that just, it's not, nobody's talking about it.
Well, I feel like this day and age with all the technology and everything, it seems like we're almost trying to be robotic in some cases. Instead of what we're really here to do is to connect and to be human beings.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. I think it's so easy to get lost in the data and the technology and
Mhm.
the medications and all those types of
Mhm.
things where sometimes you just need a person
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say, hey, I hear what you're experiencing and it's
Exactly.
real and it's valid. And I'm sorry that it's happening to you.
Yes, yes. And what I've seen in some of my years of experience, and I try to follow like what some of the nurses are going through out there right now, some of the doctors are going through,
Yeah.
and sometimes even one on one, they're like bickering and fighting amongst themselves to claim their territory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting to me that we're all healthcare professionals. We're here to help the patient, but yet sometimes we're not even helping one another as a team. We're like against one
Absolutely.
another. I'm not saying that's every practice. I'm not saying that's every hospital. I'm not saying that at all, but I have seen it in the physical therapy world when I lived in Buffalo, New York, amongst the different people that worked up in that area. Now, this is several years ago. So I'm hoping that it has changed, but there was a lot of competition between the therapists when I was up there.
Yeah, it was
So
like
I've
that
seen it.
in one of my first jobs, actually. The productivity was like the buzzword, and I'm sure you
Oh,
had that
yeah.
experience
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. And we all had productivity requirements that we needed to make. And actually, our weekly productivity numbers were posted on the wall
Yes.
and they would be highlighted. And so
Yep.
if you made your numbers, you got highlighted in green. And if you didn't, you were highlighted in red. And actually, the whole group's ability to get a bonus was dependent on the group's average productivity. And so you're right, it created a lot of stress and
Yeah.
bickering because everyone's financial performance was
Mm-hmm.
tied to these production goals. And so
Yep.
if you were a person who did stop to like take a patient to the bathroom or get someone a drink of water, do something unbillable, um, often the team would get mad at
Mm-hmm.
that person going out of
Mm-hmm.
their way to be
Mm-hmm.
kind because it brought down everyone else's numbers. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of times the culture really fights the research in that
Yeah.
topic.
And you know what? I think we see that in schools too. I remember when I was in school, sometimes they would post the grades, or even in college, they would post who passed the exams and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it's interesting that it's just not when we become adults and we're supposed to be doing adult things. It starts in the education system.
Yes. And I think that the education system is suffering from a lot of the same issues that the healthcare system is
Oh,
suffering from
exactly. Oh, exactly.
with burnout and not meeting their metrics and all those kind of things. And I think they could probably benefit from a compassion infusion too.
Definitely, definitely. Now, when it comes to caregivers, and I'm not talking about the ones that are in the hospital, those kind of things. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about the caregivers that might have an elderly aunt that lives with them and they have to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have a husband who's going through cancer treatments and they have to take care of them. So they get a lot of burnout. They may not always have a lot of kudos on them because they're being pulled in so many different directions that they might put themselves, last on the list of people to take care of. And really, they
Mm-hmm.
need to be one of the first people to take care of themselves so they can continue to take care of everybody else.
Exactly.
So if we have families that are in that situation, or if we have patients that are going to home care that are going to be in that kind of situation, those kind of things, what kind of advice or feedback would you have in that situation?
Well, I think that it's really important to be um, compassionate to yourself as a caregiver, because I think a lot of times as a caregiver, you feel like the world begins and ends with your ability to keep the world spinning.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, right? Like if the caregiver can't do it, a lot of times it doesn't get done. But you have to recognize yourself as a caregiver, as a person who might be suffering in that situation. And so you can apply those beliefs to yourself. Like, do you deserve to be suffering? because you're going out of your way to take care of someone? No.
Mhm.
Are you capable of having your suffering reduced? Probably. And so I
Mhm.
think a lot of times in the healthcare system, providers like physicians, therapists, don't always ask the caregiver if what they're recommending is feasible.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, what I've noticed in the insurance regulations is that insurance is happy to send patients home earlier so that caregivers have to take on more of the burden.
Yes,
And I think
exactly.
that's where caregivers need to be brutally honest with themselves in a meeting where, it might be easy to get steamrolled. If a case manager is in your face, like, can you
Oh,
take
yeah.
the person home tomorrow? Of course you can get them out of bed, right? Of course you can get them on the toilet. And the caregiver might be like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I can do that. But like, honesty and being brutally honest with yourself, as a self-protection, because if you're not okay and you're burned out, you can't help anybody.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think a lot of caregivers don't recognize this within themselves. They might feel burnt out, but they
Mhm.
don't really see that they're burnt out. They
Mhm.
just might be taking it out on their emotions around the issue.
Yes, yes.
So we
And
really have
I
to be aware ourselves.
That's absolutely true. And what I have read, I'm obsessed with Harriet Lerner. I don't know if you've read any of her books, but I'm obsessed
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah.
And her main point is that if you're feeling anger or resentment, it's not, and there's like a latent emotion underneath of it. And so you can use it to
Mhm.
point to areas that you should change instead of just fighting against them. So I
Yeah.
think caregivers do feel angry a lot,
Mhm.
that they're overburdened or that they don't have time to care for themselves.
Mhm.
And I think that they can take that as a clue, that they need to be compassionate to themselves, or
Yes.
ask for
Yes.
help or reach out
Yes.
to someone who can help
Yes.
them,
And
because
what was that person's name again? Say that name again.
Harriet Lerner.
Learner. That's what I thought you said. Okay.
Yeah, she's a
Nice. Nice.
psychologist and
Hmm.
she has written a million books. The probably most relevant being The Dance of Anger.
Oh,
But
wow. That's an
she,
interesting name.
yeah, she's a feminist psychologist and she's written all these great books, I think starting in the 80s or the 90s. And I've read them
Wow.
all. And she
Wow. Very
she has a
interesting.
lot to say about those topics. So
Now, the other thing I'll say about the caregivers, and I'm quite sure that you've seen too, is a lot of the time, one person in the family is always the one that's taking care of everybody. And
yes.
everybody expects that that person's going to do it. I mean, there's
Mhm.
like no question. Well,
Oh, sure.
Aunt Susie has been doing this for years. She used to be a nurse, so she takes care of everybody. I have an aunt who has helped everybody through the death process
Oh God.
because she was a OT, she was a nurse, she was a CODA, she worked for hospice.
Oh my
So
gosh.
when everybody's dying, she's always the one that they go to. Well, aren't you going to help us again? So and so, Uncle so and so, or Grandma so and so. We need your help again. And I think she takes on a lot of that role. So, what I see as so important is if you are the caregiver in that situation, please reach out to your family and say what you need, not only what the person who you're taking care of needs, but what you need to take care of them, and say, this is a village of people. This is a family. This just is not my responsibility. I need everybody who's in this boat, who's in this family, to help me along. It could be simple as dropping off a meal so I don't have to cook that night, or coming and giving me a respite and you taking over so I can go out on a date with my husband, whatever that is. And there are places, I don't know how often they realize that there are supports out there for caregivers that will have care bit opportunities. I think that's what they're called, where you can
Hmm.
actually pay someone, or it's an organization that's a charity thing. Not quite sure how that works, but someone can come in and help you at your home, or you can send your loved one to a place that
Hmm.
they will be taken care of for a short amount of time. I'm not saying, oh, we're going to drop grandpa off at the rest home and he's going to get some rest at the rest home for a year and then we're going to take over that. I'm not talking about that kind of care.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And I think it's really important to make all the unseen tasks seen. And so for somebody in that situation, I feel like it would be so helpful to say, like, I do the laundry and the meals and the bathing and the grooming. So if someone could take on the laundry and someone could take on the meals, I can do the grooming and the bathing. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like really breaking it down into
Oh, exactly.
that people are
Exactly.
capable of
Yeah.
digesting.
Right. And people can't read other people's minds. You got to speak up and say what you need. You know what the worst thing they can say is no, I'm not going to do that. No,
And
can't
then
do
you're in
that.
the same situation that you're in before.
Right.
So it's fine.
So why does it hurt? And they don't even have to give you an explanation. They can just say as simple as no.
Yeah.
And one big thing that I learned through my kidney journey and my experience is my son was really the one who invited me to stick around and to do dialysis and to try to get a kidney, because at one point I was just going to go on hospice. And I wasn't going to do any of this stuff because I assumed I was going to be like my clients that came into the nursing home and I had to take care of them. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't look like an equality. So he came to me and he said, Mom, I want you to stick around. Please do hemo. And then, yeah. I mean, good kid, good young man.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at one point in time, when I got the first transplant, he actually helped me along the process. And when I mean helped me quite a bit all the time, being there for me, getting meals for me. I think the only thing he didn't do that I would never make him do is give me a bath or wipe my butt. No, that's not his responsibility.
Sure.
So the next conversation I had to have with him when he was a grown up, an adult, was, you no longer have to take care of me. I appreciate what you've done, but do not feel guilty. Go and live your life. If you want to leave and bring out your wings and go and do whatever you want to do, please go out and do that. Mom will learn to figure out how to take care of herself and to ask for support. And the biggest thing that I learned from one of my girlfriends one time taking a course is, if you're the type of caregiver that has trouble asking for support, you've always been expected to do it. You're just the one that always says yes to everything. You never say, I can't do that. What happens if you go to the grocery store and you have a bunch of groceries and they say, ma'am, can I take your groceries out to your car for you? Say automatically yes, instead of what most women say is, no, I can do it myself. I got this. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, then the next time, if they don't ask, you ask them and say, would you please help me with my groceries out to my car? I would appreciate that. Again, they can either say yes or no. And this is the big ticket item. Are you ready for this one, Hannah?
I'm ready.
The next one, even if you get a gallon of milk or your favorite bottle of wine that you deserve finally, ask them to carry that out to the car. That's a big step. So that will help you in your learning process to ask for support. I like to say support rather than help. Asking for support sounds more positive than I'm a victim and I need help. There's a different language there. Absolutely. And that will help to boost people. I found a lot of helpful situations with those things that I brought to it. And just think about it. Let's say it's a beautiful day outside and somebody's been inside under the lights, taking care of their customers at the grocery store. And this is the first time they've had to get outside in the nice weather and listen to the birds. And you might say something to them, or they might need to have someone to listen to them that they haven't had the opportunity to. So if you think you're only getting serviced by having this service happen, you might be the one that's the listener. You might be the one that's the healer, just by opening up those doors and having compassion for that person to listen to them.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is actually, so I'm super nerdy and I write goals for myself every year, which is way nerdy. But actually one of my goals, I'm really terrible at accepting social support. Like I really stink at that. And so that's been one of my goals this year, is to say, if somebody offers to do something kind to me, yes, I should say yes. Because when I offer to be kind to someone, I'm doing it out of a genuine desire to be helpful and kind. And so I should allow other people to have those opportunities too. And I can be a gracious receiver, and we can socially support each other that way.
Exactly.
And it's really been great. I'm enjoying myself.
Yes.
I'm enjoying
Yes.
having social support like that. So I love
Yeah.
what you have to say about that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
sometimes I think, especially as women or as caregivers, we can feel like we need to be independent and we need to be
Exactly.
doing it on our own, and we don't
Exactly.
need you to bring dinner over, because obviously I can do that for myself. But sometimes it just feels good, and I think it opens up space for us to then turn around and be kind to someone else in return. It keeps that
Exactly.
compassion cycle rolling.
Yeah, exactly. I think the feminist movement brought a lot to us as women, as girls, as mentors. However, we were told to be so independent, we forgot about how to help one another
Mm-hmm.
and be kind to one another. And I can help you, you help me, and support you, you help support me, kind of thing. So it's nice that we're coming around to hopefully that again. And the same goes for money with women and their pocketbooks. How many
Mm-hmm.
times do you give and give and give, and somebody will say, "Oh, well, I'll give you, $20 for gas or whatever," and you just say, "No, I got it." Well,
Yes.
what happens if you just start saying, "Yes, that's taking care of you," and there you go, give and you receive again, rather than just saying
Exactly.
no. Same thing with our pocketbooks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the give and receive, it's such a big deal. And that's, I think, what that study was talking about people who give compassion are able to receive social support. And what the study hypothesized and actually figured out was that actually the people who were more compassionate reached out for social support during the stressful situation in the study. And so everyone was put into the same stressful situation, and the people with the compassionate practice, they were able to connect with the decoy humans in the study to access that support. And so it wasn't that nobody wanted the support, it was just that people who were comfortable with giving kindness were also more comfortable with receiving kindness, and they almost approached people with the expectation that they would receive kindness from other people. And I like the idea of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that goes along too with what we find in healthcare. I remember one of the hospitals did this exercise where they would bring us in, and if you wanted to, you could sign up. And you were told what your job was, what your responsibilities were, and what resources you had out there. And most of the time, the people who need the resources the most don't know how to utilize them.
Yes.
And that's part of compassion, is realizing that maybe this woman who is in this situation with a husband, who is dying, and you're helping out with them in hospice, she might lose her job because she's not there to work at work, and she's helping to take care of her husband. And maybe there are some more supports out there, but she's so busy taking care of what she needs to do and helping her husband go through this process, she doesn't know where to start first to get those types of support.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find this a lot too, that sometimes we don't make space for that caregiver to tell their whole story. And so one study that I read said that the average healthcare provider interrupts the person talking after 11 seconds. And so maybe if we would just stop interrupting people, that caregiver would say, the reason why I feel so hesitant to accept XYZ treatment plan is because I'm going to get fired if I don't go to work. Like she might be leading up to say that, except that we cut her off and we're not listening to the whole story.
Part of that is productivity. And I think this day in America, our attention span is so low, and we listen so we can respond rather than listen so the other person feels heard. And that's huge all the way around with everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Even when you're sick and your husband's taking care of you, have some compassion for him too, as you're throwing up and he's holding your hair back and you're sneezing, and, have some compassion for them too, that, they're kind of going through some of this with you, or vice versa.
Sure.
That's just one scenario that I can come up with. Yeah.
It's all a shared experience.
Yeah. So how did you get so involved in focusing in on this particular subject?
Oh my gosh, it's so roundabout. So I started out working inpatient, which it sounds like is your experience also, that you were an inpatient.
I've done it all.
Yeah, yeah. And I realized I sort of got the reputation for being the person that difficult patients would respond to. So I ended up with a caseload of all the really
Oh yeah.
trying
Yeah.
people,
Oh, I know how that goes. Yeah.
which I guess is like flattering in a way, but also like seriously. Then
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
moved to Ohio, and I decided I wasn't going to do inpatient work anymore, and I started doing pelvic floor therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized kind of the same skills, different, body parts and different
Mm-hmm.
conversation topics, but really the
Mm-hmm.
same skills of just active listening, building
Yes.
relationships, building trust. And then once you establish that baseline of trust and kindness and non-judgment, our treatments would go so well. And so, anyways, we moved back home, and I tried to look up a study for a patient. And this patient had been really difficult, and he we had spent really a lot of time trying to build our compassionate relationship, because he came in hot, I came in hot, and we had to really work hard to meet each other
Oh.
in the middle. And I was trying to remember a study I had read about compassionate care and heart surgery. Of course, I couldn't remember the
Mm.
details. So I told him, I was like, let me Google it and I'll tell you about it next session. So I never found the study that I was looking for, but I found like hundreds of articles about the way, like published in serious journals, about the ways that compassion impacts healthcare and healthcare delivery and patient outcomes and human experience. And then I just sort of got obsessed, and I started reading books about it. And then I started talking to patients about it, and I started talking to my colleagues about it, and just no one knew any of the information. And I felt really floored because I didn't know the information, and I really liked this stuff and I didn't know about it. Um, so I just started talking about it. And then I started writing about it on my blog about Case for Compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just tried to stay really open to keeping the conversation going. And I got the opportunity to teach at our local PT school.
That's awesome.
And it all sort of fell together. But the studies that I read, they just feel true. They feel like
Mm-hmm.
they mirror personal experience, where it's
Yeah.
really, if you spend time pouring into a person, um, people respond to that and they like it, and it makes them feel good, and it makes them care about themselves, and it makes them more polite towards
Mm-hmm.
others. And it's just like a positive synergy spiral, where if
Mm-hmm.
one person, if we can connect on a human level,
Yes.
um, a lot of good can come from it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a wonderful story. I love to hear about that. It's
Yeah.
interesting that people start out in different healthcare professions, whether it's nursing, physical therapy, you're a doctor, whatever your situation, radiology. And at
Mm-hmm.
some point in time, you take a little curve in there, or you really jump to something else, that might still be providing care to people, but it might be in a different container.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think it takes some years of experience and trial and error to figure it out. I always knew that I loved working with people, and I always knew that I loved humans. And it's taken me a while to distill down that what I really like is relationship building, and I really
Yes.
value that.
Yeah.
And so now I can kind of focus that way.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a book with some of the blogs that you've put out with? If you have all these blogs written, you've already had the book started right there.
I know. I love that you just said that. That has been like a pipe dream of mine since I was like 8 years old. I told my
Hmm.
mom, she was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "I'm going to be a lonely writer." And she was like, "Well,
Mm.
I think you can have friends and also be a writer."
Right. I love that.
I
Yes.
don't
Go
think you have to
mom.
be lonely. Like,
Go mom.
I think you can have friends and do the writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would really love to do that one day. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't think that I would ever write. And I would say that when I was younger, I would say I'm not a good writer. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt that the information that I need to get out with the two books I wrote needed to go there, needed to be said. Never Say Never,
Yeah.
Living with Kidney Disease from Victim to Victorious, not only talks about my story, how I went through the process of the kidney disease and the healing of it, But going from saying, I'm done, I'm out of here, I'm on hospice, to saying, no, I'm all in, that big leap. And then in the back of the book, it talks about all the things that a kidney patient might need to know. Dialysis, what do kidneys do? Where can they get resources for funding? All the stuff in the back, because sometimes patients can get so inundated if they have cancer, or all these different things that can alter your life, that especially if you're not in healthcare and you don't know the language, it can just feel so overwhelming. First, you're sick, you're probably tired, you're going through all these emotions, and then people are throwing all this information at you.
Yeah,
and you want to do, and you want to do the right thing for yourself and for your family, if you have a family, those kind of things. It feels so overwhelming. So I tried to put it all in one book. So yeah, I understand that pipe dream. Like I said, I never thought I was going to do it, but once I started to journal and everything, and I knew it was important to get out. So I would highly encourage you, if that's what you think you would love to do, that you're passionate about, is someday sit down and take those blogs and figure out a way to make a book out of it. You can do it either self-publishing, or you can get a publisher. Either way, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Sure. Thank you for saying that. That's very affirming to me.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you teach this? Who's your little one right now? How old are they?
So I have two little boys, and they're both May babies. So Elijah is almost 5 and William is almost 2.
So how do you teach compassion with them at those age?
Well, I try really hard. I've already disclosed my nerdiness, and I read this study that said the average American can identify 3 emotions: angry, sad, and happy. And I think to have compassion and empathy for others, you have to be able to get outside of those 3 emotions, right? Because like the world is a huge emotional landscape.
Right.
So we have spent extensive time talking about like being able to label our emotions, and like, are you sad or are you disappointed? Like, are you angry or are you frustrated? Like, are you happy or are you content? So we spend a lot of time talking and reading books about that kind of stuff. And then we try really hard to revisit social situations and normalize. And so I can think of a time recently where Elijah was really sad. Well, he felt sad. And we distilled it down to actually he was feeling left out.
Yes.
And then we sort of talked about left out. And what does it mean when you feel left out? You're like disappointed and sad and a little bit lonely about it. And then we talk then about the flip side of that being inclusion. So, you felt left out. It didn't feel good in your body. There are times when you could either leave someone out or choose to include them so that other people don't feel that way. So we talk a lot about it.
That's awesome.
They're really receptive.
When they're that age, definitely. And, so you're going to have some amazing human beings over there, I can see.
Hopefully honing their emotional intelligence, or at least their language.
Yes. Now, I'm curious, a 5-year-old, have they been able to show any compassion towards you? Are they at that stage?
We're starting to get there, which is really, really sweet.
It is.
It's really, really sweet and a little bit gratifying and just like heart melting,
Yeah. I can remember those times. Mommy, are you okay? You're crying. Are you okay? Those kind of things.
Yeah. Or just making sure, especially Elijah, who's almost 5, he knows my favorite things. And so he'll make sure, he'll be like, well, this is Mom's favorite, so you should have that one. And that's so nice. It's so thoughtful.
Really is.
I love
awesome.
it. Yeah.
I think the one that's younger, you said, is that one 2?
Yeah, almost 2.
Yeah, that one is all about me, Mama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's not quite out. He's not quite out of the me stage yet.
I remember those days too. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is also mine, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation at this point in time?
I don't think so. I think we mostly covered it.
I think so too.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel complete, definitely. However, when you say, I think that's all you have to say about this, I don't think that's all you have to say. I think this is just one conversation just to start some more conversations and some more education. So when people want to find you, how are they going to find Hannah Todd?
All right. So if you want to find Hannah Todd, you can find me. My blog is Case for Compassion with the number 4.com, or you can find me on Facebook at The Case for Compassion, or you can find me on Twitter at Compassionate PT.
Nice.
I'm talking about all this stuff all the time.
I love it. I'm going to ask you a personal question about Twitter. Do you find that helpful? Do you like that? I haven't really delved into that too much yet.
No, I stink at Twitter. I was having this problem where my posts are being removed from Facebook, which is a whole nother
that helps a lot with people.
So,
you're not the only one.
Yeah, it's so irritating. But so I was like, this is fine. I'll just switch over to Twitter. Well, I stink at Twitter. It's a whole nother ball game. And it seems like you really need to be engaged continuously in order for people to feel like they also want to interact with what you're putting out. And so I appreciate it in that it seems like there's real humans behind the Twitter handles and that it's an engaged community. But I don't have a lot of time to devote to messaging people on Twitter all day. So it hasn't been that fruitful for me, but I have high hopes. I have 14 whole followers now on Twitter. So
you go.
That's right. I'm learning, I'm connecting, I'm working on it. But no, I've had a hard time with Twitter as compared to other social media outlets.
I haven't delved into it that much, but my nephrologist said that would be some good resources for me to get out there and do that. And especially now I've created Beth's kidney support group on Facebook and trying to get it out there and letting the physicians and the nurses and stuff know that that's what I'm offering also, that would be a good way to communicate. And I just haven't stepped out into that.
Well,
yet.
I think
whole new language.
Right. The people that you can communicate with there will be very receptive, but I think you have to find the people and then you have to spend time pouring into them. And so, if you have the time, it's probably worth it. But
Well, I have just enjoyed this conversation so much and enjoyed being with you. You're such a light spiritual being. I can just see it radiating from you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I know your clients and your patients and your friends and everybody else can feel that too, I would imagine. So I'm thankful to have people like you in this world to share that light, because we need that right now with everything that's going on in the world right now. The people that are here, we're here for a purpose, to do, this is our work here on earth. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me a platform. I appreciate being connected to you. I'm excited to see where your business grows and to be connected together.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to ask you to stay after. I'm going to stop the recording so we can just chat for a minute.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good.
Well, I do appreciate everybody being here for this podcast. There's many other people that need to be heard, so you can listen to them and different experiences with different topics. So until next time, have a great day. Oh, I didn't mean to do